Hi guys, my name is Crystal Olisa. Thank you so much for dropping by. Be sure to subscribe for more great content. Today's video is one you have asked for and I have wanted to do for the longest time. I literally just have not had a chance to sit down in front of a camera and shoot a video. So today we are banging one out. Today's video is one that you have requested and I am actually happy to be bringing it to you. So I've just gathered all the information that I could find on this paper trail essentially, and we are going to be discussing why I chose my particular AAR medical cover plan, especially like what it is first of all, because they have very specific names to them and I don't want to just throw it out there and like be wrong, so I do have all of the details here. If you want to learn more about what my thought process is as I narrowed it down and why I eventually went for the Silver Plus cover, then just keep watching. Okay, so as I mentioned, my policy is the Silver Plus cover. So I'm going to take you through which policies exist. Again, I have to mention I am not like a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. I'm not an AAR representative. This is not a sponsored video. So this isn't information they like asked me to give to you, or like I'm not a qualified professional in this field. Basically, I'm just telling you the information that was presented to me and how I narrowed it down to the option that I eventually chose. Why I chose AAR over something else. I'd actually looked into Jubilee before AAR, and weirdly the way this happened, the way that like I eventually ended up with AAR, the way that I ended up even looking into Jubilee was so strange. I was at Westgate, I think, and a guy just like talked to me in the parking lot, and this was pre-corona and everything, and he was just like, "Madam, can I tell you about this insurance policy that is amazing?" And because I've had the benefit of being under my mom's insurance policy cover when she was working at a specific company that had an amazing insurance cover, when he was telling me like the limits and like how much it costs and all of that, I looked at him and I knew this wasn't a good deal, because I knew like with my previous cover as a dependent, I had 80,000 shillings as a dental maximum limit that renews every year. So I was thinking, if you can't even give me that, if you can't even give me like a new pair of spectacles every year, because that is part of what I had under the previous AR insurance cover, and I believe I still have that over here, but it wasn't like the deal breaker for me this time. But if you can't even give me those two very basic things, and then your outpatient was so low, I think the outpatient was about 70,000 shillings or something, and the inpatient as well was so low, and everything he was saying just didn't sound impressive to me. But at the same time, I did know that I wanted to eventually get an insurance, like a personal private healthcare cover policy for myself. So eventually just things happened and fell into place, and eventually just had to get one, and eventually ended up pulling the trigger. I actually went to Greenfield Mall, something, the one at Adams Arcade, because I know for a fact there's an AAR there, because when I did used to do my annual checkups, that is where I would go. So I walked in and I wanted to find out the cost of getting a certain series of injections done, and I wanted to find out the cost versus getting it under the actual cover, because I had wanted to pursue it immediately versus waiting until I decide on a cover. But then it ended up being 5,000 a pop, and you need like 4 or 5 injections, and I'm just like, okay, fine, we'll get your cover. So I got a card from the lady at the reception, and that is the insurance agent that I ended up calling and getting information on. Mind you, by the time I actually went into the office, it was like February, so this was pre-pandemic. Yeah, actually it was just before the pandemic like started getting serious in Kenya. Like we started taking it seriously essentially, so that's why I went in person into their office. But if you call them, I'm sure they'll be able to like direct you to someone as well. So I'll also leave the contacts of my person down below, because he was so good. Like I mentioned that this was in February, because I actually ended up getting my policy end of July, and he was so patient with me throughout the entire thing. He didn't at any point like dismiss me as someone who's not serious, because I mentioned in like previous videos that I was trying to like save up and like build up my emergency fund and like trying to hold on to that money. But then at some point I was just like, I just pull the trigger, get it done, because this is important and you don't know why this is so heavy on your mind, right? Like I feel like God sends us signs and it's like, do this, because he sees down the road and like we don't. So it's just a whole thing. So this is how I ended up narrowing down to AAR, because I'd already been under their insurance policy under my mom. It was an AAR thing. And if I can give you any advice, if you are 24 is when you age out of being a dependent under someone in AAR. If you are 24 and under, they give you the option once you age out of continuing the exact same policy, but then now paying for it out of pocket. So for me, I would have continued that amazing policy even till date, at a rate of 30,000 shillings per year, which is so amazing. But my 24-year-old brain was like, I don't need healthcare. I don't need insurance. Like, I barely used it to begin with. So to think of paying 30,000 for a policy that I would not even use 1,000 bob of every year, it just didn't feel worthwhile at the time. But now, 4 years later, I'm just like, God damn. Like, I wish, like, I don't think our parents also know the significance of this. So if she had sat me down and been like, this is important and you need to step up and do it, then I would have done it. But then, like, I don't think she also knew, because we both weren't really using the cover. So it's like we both don't really get sick. So there's no point. Even when I was using the cover, it would literally be like, I have a headache. I've had a headache for 2 days. Let's go see what's up. You know, it's not like big things, right? So even the injections that I wanted, they're elective and they're preventative. And it's like, there's a whole thing. Like, you can actually prevent future cervical cancer by getting these injections. And I'm just like, how is this not a standard thing that everyone is doing across the world? So when I found out about it, I like went gung-ho and I was like, I'm gonna look into it, I'm gonna get it. Now I have the cover. Have I even gone? So it's a whole thing. But before we get into TMI territory, let's circle back to the AAR covers and like what they offer. So I actually have my laptop here. I swear I actually shot a review video on this laptop, and then I just didn't like the way the footage came out, so I need to like redo it. But my beautiful baby is here and it is helping us. So yeah, this is all the information that Emmanuel, is my agent person, he sent it to me so that I could actually look over it and like make an informed decision. So it took me a really long time to like actually research this and like decide what works best for me. So hopefully my thought process can actually help you make your decision maybe faster, because we started talking in February and then March the pandemic happened and whatever. So through that period I was asking him like, is this changing anything? Like, should I get in on this policy now, because now with Corona happening and people definitely needing more cover, is it going to affect the rates, maybe the coverage, maybe the terms and conditions, anything at all? And he said absolutely not. They cover you the same in a Corona year that they cover you outside of a Corona year. And I just thought that showed like a level of integrity that you don't really expect from insurance companies, you know, like with all these horror stories you hear. So I feel like for me, I've narrowed it down to AAR. Pretty happy with that. Don't really see myself going to another company for any reason unless I'm like really screwed over by them. And I've been with them basically my whole life and never been screwed over, so pretty good. So the first sheet he sent me is the individual and family benefits products sheet. I don't know what it's called. I'm literally just reading the title here, but yeah, it just shows the overall things that they cover and how much is covered under each individual plan, because I tried going on the website, but then in some ways it just wasn't clear enough. So having it all on one sheet just made everything so good. So inpatient treatment, okay, so they have 6 different coverage types, right? So I'm seeing the lowest one is Cover Me, which has overall annual limit, inpatient 1 million, right? And this is the most important part for me. The other details, I don't really like go into it, like inpatient organ transplant, something. Like, I feel like once you choose the lane that you want, then you have a reasonable expectation, because you'll find that in those details, the differences are quite minor. So from the lowest one, I'll give you an example that actually relates to me. Eye care benefits, outpatient, 5,000 bob for the cheapest one, 7,500 for the next one, then 10,000, then 15,000, then 20,000, then 25,000. So that jump, unless you're looking at the cheapest and the most expensive, isn't too big, because the cheapest two is 5,000 and 7,500. That barely makes a difference, you know. So I feel like once you have the high level, like you're happy with the amount there, then everything trickling down will sort of make sense. I hope that makes sense. So Cover Me is the cheapest one, and that has an overall annual limit of 1 million shillings. Bronze is the next one, overall annual limit 3 million shillings. Silver, next one, overall annual limit 6 million shillings. Now we're talking, right? Because 3 million shillings, I feel like every time you see those messages circulating on Facebook, in your friends groups and all of that, every time you see someone like doing a medical fundraising, it's always for like 4 million and above. It's never under 3 million shillings. So I feel like once you hit the 6 million is when you're really talking, especially once you look at the total cost of the different plans and you find that it's maybe 10,000 more and you're covered for 3 million shillings more. I think it's definitely worth it. So yeah, silver, 6 million. Silver plus, which is the one that I am on, overall annual limit, 12 million shillings. Felt like that was pretty fair middle ground, you know. There is gold, which the overall annual limit, 20 million shillings. Platinum, overall annual limit, 40 million shillings. Now, if you were paying me the 40 million shillings, I would be more than happy to like sign up for that. But at the same time, I have actually had conversations with my family and been like, you know, at some point, you have to, okay, for me, not for everyone, but for me, I feel like because I love Jesus and I want to meet him and I'm not afraid of like death, right? So at some point, unplug me. Like I literally told my uncle, count 11,999,999. Once we get there, pull the plug. Don't take on any medical debt in the name of keeping me alive, in the name of let's see what will happen in a month, because I feel like if we've spent 12 million shillings and I'm still not responsive and I'm still not doing okay, then at some point it's okay. Like I'm okay with you just saying, let her go. You know, like it's fine. But at 6 million shillings, I feel like we have 6 million more options, you know? So that is why I didn't go for the silver, which your overall annual limit is 6 million, versus the silver plus, which your overall annual limit is 12 million. You see? So yeah, I just felt 12 million and 6 million, that difference is worth like going a little bit the extra mile versus 12 million and 20 million. Like 20 million, you can be in a coma for like an extra month. And I don't mean to sound like flippant about these things because obviously this is important. And like when you're in this situation, it's very difficult. But for me, I've made my wishes known. Once we hit the limits of my medical cover, let's not try to do more. Like it's not going to be another hospital that will figure it out. If after 12 million shillings, we haven't figured it out yet, right? So I know technically if you work in the medical field, that probably sounds really, really low because like a bed in ICU is like 150 per day or something ridiculous. So maybe, I don't know. I don't have any answers. As I said, this isn't an advice video. This is just you hearing my thought process. Then maybe you can make your own decision down the road. Yeah, so I'm actually seeing they have overall annual limit, 12 million shillings for silver plus. Accident hospitalization, 8 million is the limit. Illness hospitalization, 4 million is the limit. These are things I didn't even look at. I just looked at the overall annual limit and I was like, good to go. But you'll find it's 12 million, 8 million, 4 million for that. But for the overall gold, 10 million, accident, 10 million, illness, 10 million. So that's a pretty big jump between the illness hospitalization from 4 million to 10 million. And if I had noticed that before, maybe I would have sprung for more. But at the same time, I don't actually go to hospitals. So yeah, I don't think that would have been worth it to me. I don't know. It depends. You see, now it depends on you and your medical history and your medical expectations. And also it depends on you and your dependents because this is a single person plan, right? But if you have dependents, then you probably want to have a bit more of a buffer, especially when the cost isn't actually that much more. So it depends on what makes sense for you. This is just what made sense for me. So yeah, also for platinum, overall 40 million, accident 20 million, illness 20 million. So that's a much, much bigger buffer. And if you're like 4 people, definitely worth looking into, I think. So I literally just noticed in this sheet, they have other optional services, personal accident death, 1 million shillings. I guess your family gets 1 million shillings if you're a gold or platinum member, but I am just shy of that. So I don't get any, my family doesn't get anything, but at the same time, like people shouldn't be profiting from your death. So I'm not trying to pay extra just so people can get like 1 million shillings. I don't know. Anyway, like I said, I'm sounding very flippant in this video, but it's not because I don't take this seriously, but because just Jesus and I are like this. Like I know where I'm going when I die, so I'm not that fast, to be honest. But yes, so we can now get down to my actual quotation because once I saw like everything laid out, instead of getting a quotation for each of them because I knew I wouldn't go for the 1 million cover me or the bronze 3 million, or even the 6 million, to be honest. But then I was like, just send me a breakdown of the different costs so that I can see. Because if it's bronze 3 million, but the cost is like 20,000 per year, for me who doesn't go to hospital until I have dependents, maybe that's something that I can use to like get my foot into the door, right? So I ended up getting this sheet, which is a crystal Olisa medical quote right there. Yeah, so the bronze one, the principal payment 3 million unshared, 18,000 shillings, outpatient per person 40,000 shillings. So another very crucial thing that I looked at when I was making my decision wasn't just the overall annual limit, but also the overall outpatient limit, because a few times that I do actually use my medical cover, even in the past it was always outpatient. So like I mentioned, if I get a headache or something, or if something is paining, or if I have just some random things, right, I would just go to a hospital, go to Aga Khan in town. I remember that because that was my favorite place. It was so convenient. So yeah, even if it just needed like a refill of a headache medicine or something, I would go there, and that's outpatient. So I wanted my outpatient to be at least a bit more flexible, right? So for the Cover Me outpatient, 50,000 shillings, that is very, very low. You'd be surprised how quickly you go through it, because like I mentioned before that I had a dental thing, and that dental thing cost over 15,000 shillings. So that alone as part of your outpatient means that, no, actually dental is separate, but no, let's talk about my finger. My finger, when I cut myself, cost about 14,000 shillings. That's part of my outpatient. So that already deducts so much from it, and it means that the rest of the year I have to definitely make sure I'm not actually spending any money in a hospital, like I'm not hurting myself, or like I have to be super, super careful, because 50,000, very, very small buffer. For the bronze outpatient, 75,000, again still quite small, and I feel like this is what Jubilee was trying to sell me, like as the silver package. Outpatient of 75,000, I was like, nah, fam, because before on the previous one that I could have continued with 30,000 shillings if I had been a smart 24-year-old, my outpatient was, I think, 250,000 shillings, which was solid, which I used like not even 10% of, not even 10%, not even 2% of, to be honest. But yeah, still to have that buffer is definitely a plus. Silver is 100,000 shillings outpatient, still a little bit low. Silver plus, I'm seeing 200,000 / 150,000. Don't really know what that discrepancy is, but okay. For gold, it's 200,000 outpatient, and for platinum, which covers you total 40 million shillings, but outpatient is 250,000. So do you see why I hate myself for not just continuing with my previous plan? Like, it's so frustrating, but it's fine. So yes, I did get the different quotations. In the quotation that he gave me, the silver plus outpatient was 150,000, which I think is fair. So that's what I went with. But you can see here the bronze cost of getting the bronze total is 59,000 and some shillings, and bronze is a 3 million. These are the only three that I got quotations on, just because I knew I wouldn't go any lower than that, and I knew I wasn't willing to be like a platinum insurance member. It just wasn't necessary. So yeah, bronze for 3 million shilling total coverage, you're paying 59,000 shillings per year. Silver plain for 6 million shillings total coverage, you're paying 67,000 shillings per year. So that's not even a 10,000 shilling jump, and you've already doubled your annual total coverage. Like, I feel like these are the details you need to really look into, because you'll end up trying to save a couple of coins every year, but then in the long run you screw yourself over, right? It doesn't make any sense. And now jumping into the one that I got, for the silver plus, I pay 76,000 shillings per year, but I get a 12 million shilling coverage versus a 6 million shilling coverage at 67,000 shillings. Like, literally, again, for 9,000 more per year, I'm getting 6 million more shillings in coverage. Like, that definitely struck me as being worthwhile. And the outpatient was acceptable, 150,000, and the inpatient is what, depending on the breakdown, 8 million, 10 million, 12 million. Like, it's definitely something that I thought would be worth it. And this is the coverage that they give for people between the ages of 18 and 30. So once I turn 31, my coverage goes up a little bit, but I feel like at that point I'll probably be able to afford a little bit more, so I'm okay with that. And yeah, that is how I narrowed it down to my particular insurance package. I hope that brain dump actually makes sense to some of you. I hope, if I'm talking too fast, again, I can't help it, talking really fast in these videos, so just slow me down a little bit, maybe rewind it and like listen again. But yeah, that's basically my entire thought process as I narrowed it down through the different packages, because I think the cost of getting the super platinum or something was like 110,000 shillings, and I thought jumping from 76 to 110,000 shillings is quite a big jump, especially per year, especially for someone who does not plan to get sick, especially for someone who doesn't want to be like in ICU for years and years and years in the name of let's hope something happens, you know. So it depends on what your priorities are, what your particular needs are. So yeah, based on that, you make your own decision. Again, not giving you advice, just giving you my experience. Extrapolate from that whatever you will. Right? So this section is relevant to you if you actually decide to go with the AAR plan. Some things that I thought are really important for me to mention, so that you're not feeling blindsided once you actually sign up for it, is key waiting periods. So this is something that, because my agent is amazing, he actually made very, very clear to me. But again, it was over conversations over many, many months. So it wasn't just in one conversation that someone might actually forget to mention this to you. I think it's very important that you know that before your policy kicks in, there is an actual waiting period. So you'll pay for the policy today, but you're not immediately covered today. If there is an emergency in between these 2 months before your policy actually starts, then you can call them and have them activate it early. But I think they would activate it on like a one one-off basis, not like activate it early so that it can start earlier. Does that make sense? So I paid for my policy in July, but it was only in October that I was actually covered by the policy. But God forbid something happened and I was in an accident sometime in September, they will be able to cover that medical stay if I called them and actually like got approval. So getting the approval isn't really an issue. It's just a matter of you have to actually reach out and make them aware of it, right? So key waiting periods. As per the policy document, which came in this package here, 60 days on illness inpatient claims except for accident. So I guess the accident is the blanket exception, but still I was told that if there is an emergency and something happens and you need to like check into a hospital, you can't just call them and like discuss it with them, right? So 60 days on illness inpatient claims except for accidents, 14 days on outpatient claims. So I guess in those, okay, for me, I just thought of it as a blanket 2 months that I'm not covered. So I guess after 14 days, I could have walked into an outpatient center and like been golden. 12 months on inpatient chronic and pre-existing claims. So if like God forbid you have cancer and you want to pay today and get the treatment tomorrow, that's not going to be possible. That is why you look into these things when you're not under pressure, like when you're not in need of a medical cover, because they have a 12-month waiting period. So you would still need to pay for the second cover before you actually got covered. Does that make sense? So 12 months inpatient congenital conditions, 12 months inpatient maternity hospitalization claims. So I guess if I get pregnant at some point, well, inpatient means I'm giving birth, right? So if I was to give birth within my first year of coverage, I guess that wouldn't work. I guess I don't want you to like find out you're pregnant today and then like go get the policy tomorrow, because they're not going to cover you for 12 months. So these things like insurance and whatever, it's definitely something you want to get before the need arises, which is why I eventually ended up pulling the trigger on it, because I was like, there's a reason God is putting this so heavy in my heart to get. So I feel like instead of just ignoring it and then later down the road being like, but if I had cover, this would be so much easier and so much cheaper, I think it's definitely better for me to just pay for it early when I feel like I don't need it, when I feel like I'm not using it, and sort of look at it as an investment. So I've heard there's a whole blow up of these education policy investments that are like coming due and not being paid out or something crazy like that. I don't know. Never invest in an education policy is basically what I am learning from the internet. But the way that I look at insurance is that I'm paying 76,000 shillings for it, right? And this is every year I'm paying 76,000. So forgetting that it will go up when I get into a different age bracket, 76,000 shillings times 10 years means that I have paid 760,000 shillings. If even I've only used 20,000 of that 760,000 that I have paid in 10 years, it's still sort of giving me an insurance policy of, In 10 years, I've only paid 760, but at any point in those 10 years, I could have used up to 12 million. So there's literally no point, based on the policy that I have chosen, that I will actually pay more than the value of the policy itself. Does that make sense? So I only wanted to start paying for it when I was sure that I could commit to like pay for it for the rest of my life, essentially, like every year, because 760,000 versus 12 million shillings, that is a big freaking difference. So it's an insurance policy, but it's not like an educational insurance policy. It's an insurance policy that actually makes sense and actually works. Right? I hope that makes sense. Yeah, even 20 years, that's still 1.4 million shillings, 1.5 million shillings. Like, that is nothing if ever there is a day that I actually need to use it and use all of it. So 1.5 million shillings over 20 years versus 12 million shillings. Like, it would take so much for me to actually catch up to that full amount. So for me to stop feeling like paying for it yearly would be worth it. So I definitely think it's worth it, even if you don't foresee yourself needing it for the next 20 years. Then the day that you do need it and having it there is so much more valuable to me than the small pinch closing your eyes every year that you have to do, because at the end of the day, it's still worthwhile. Even if you said I would save that money and you saved for 30 years, you still would not be anywhere close to the 12 million shillings, right? So I think it's worth it. Another thing I will mention is that the scam that is this policy is when you try to break up the payments, because I was like, what if I wanted to pay like half this month and half next month? Do you know, just for that little bit, you have to sign like a whole new different document, because then they sort of see it as them giving you a loan, because if you do need coverage at some point before you're done paying for it, they will give you that coverage, but then they're treating you as someone who is fully covered when you haven't fully paid for your cover. So it is sort of a loan. And just for that 1 month jump, even if like I paid half on Friday and the other half on Monday, I would have to pay them an extra 5,000 shillings in like their interest charge, which is ridiculous. And if I did it for like over 3 months and I'm paying an extra 10,000 shillings, and if I did it for 4 months, I'm paying an extra like 15,000 shillings or something crazy like that. So this is definitely something you want to just close your eyes and get it all done at once, because the downside of not paying the full amount, like I could have gone like month to month and been paying like 9,000 shillings, literally 9,000 shillings. That's in 10 months, that's 90,000 shillings. 108,000 shillings would have been my total for the exact same plan, for the exact same cover, instead of 76,000 shillings. Like, that is where it becomes a scam, but only if you allow it to take you as a scam, which is why this year I am saving up like early enough and like making sure I have all the cash upfront ready to pay before the expiry happens. Because what happens if it expires and then you want to come back, you're treated as a new patient, but because you already had a policy with them before, they're like, oh, why is she coming back? Is she coming back because she's discovered something? Because it's like, you can come back 1 day after the expiry, or you can come back 5 years after the expiry, and you'll be treated the same. So don't let it expire, because once you try to come back, or if you try to upgrade your policy, so like maybe you start with the Cover Me for 1 million shillings for, was it 57,000 shillings or something? So once you start with the Cover Me, and then you're like, no, I want to sort of upgrade to the Silver Plus, which is 76,000 shillings, right? But then now you have to go for a whole battery of medical tests, and they have to know why you're increasing it. What do you need us to cover? What thing has come up? Like, what are you now sick with? And it's just a whole bunch of questions, versus the very first time that you sign up for it. Even me, who did previously have a cover, because it was a different situation and it wasn't like individually covered, and then I left and then came back, is treated a bit differently. So I am treated as a fresh patient. I can come in at any tier that I see fit, and they just sign me up, no questions asked, no battery of tests needed to be done. Like, they don't need to do a physical to make sure there's nothing wrong with me before they recategorize me. But then so if you do try to sort of game the system, they have like a counter to that, and they won't let you just like come back willy-nilly or upgrade willy-nilly, which is why I decided like the 12 million is what I am happy to commit to. Don't need 20 million. I feel like that's just a bit overkill for me. So I didn't feel that I needed to spring a little bit more. I would have been happy with 6, but then 9,000 shillings for 6 million shillings more was just like a no-brainer for me, you know? So yeah, those are the things that I think are very, very important for you to keep in mind. And also, back to these many papers that I have here. So all of this is relating to when I cut my finger last year, right? So I went to Sanal Hospital, somewhere here on Mombasa Road, and they I asked them, do you take insurance? And they told me, no, we don't take insurance. So I was like, fine, I'll pay for it out of pocket. And then they treated me, and they treated me very, very well. But not once did they mention to me that I could actually claim for this treatment from my insurance, which makes absolutely no sense, because you don't take insurance, but there is another workaround. Why would you not tell me? So one thing you have to do is really look out for yourself, and remember, yes, there is such a thing as a claim form, and yes, you can actually claim back for any treatment that you get somewhere else from your insurance, even though that particular person does not take insurance. So what happens is you will pay the hospital the amount. So I ended up paying, I think, 11,800 shillings, something like that, and then I ended up claiming it back from AAR. So what happened was, that day was an emergency. I didn't have time to call my agent and be like, what should I do? Because it was already quite late and I wasn't sure if they were going to be open. So I just needed to get it done. So I just went, paid, got it done, then left. And then I had a follow-up appointment for 7 days later. So in that period is when I just thought, I've heard this claim form thing before, but because I've always gone to a hospital that's in coverage, before when I was covered, I never actually paid attention to it. So I called him and I was like, okay, so this is a situation, this is what happened. Is there anything that you can do for me as my insurance provider? And he was like, yeah. What you do is you fill in a claim form and then we refund you whatever it is you spent in that hospital. But he made it very clear that if I had decided to go on a hospital on the moon and they charged me triple the normal rates for different procedures, then they would only be able to refund me what their standardized rate for that procedure is. So, for example, if I wanted to go and have, I don't know why boob job came to mind, but if I wanted to go and have just let's say stitches, right? Here they charged me 4,500 for stitches. If I had gone somewhere, and that is the basic price because that is what was refunded, but if I had gone somewhere and they had charged me 20,000 shillings for stitches, then AAR asked me to go back to the hospital and get an invoice from the people that treated me. They asked me to get a broken down invoice for exactly what it is they treated me for and billed me for. So AAR takes this invoice and compares it to their prices in their system for their in-cover hospitals and doctors and whatever. So if the prices match up, they pay you. If the prices don't match up, they generate their own invoice on what it would have cost them if you had gone to an in-cover hospital, and then they refund you for that. So if 4,500 was a ridiculous price for stitches and maybe 2,000 bob is the standardized price, then they would have adjusted the whole invoice to reduce that 2,000 shillings and I would have gotten a refund of everything except 2,000 shillings. I hope that makes sense. So it is very, very important that you get this broken down invoice of every visit. Another thing that happened for that visit, because I had to go back for a follow-up, he was like, okay, for the follow-up, since it's not an emergency, why don't you go somewhere that is covered, so that in case there's something else that comes up, then you don't have to claim for it or pay for it out of pocket, right? But the thing is, with this hospital, the follow-up period within those 7 days is free, so I wouldn't have actually been paying for anything, versus with AAR, there is a copay system. So when I go to a hospital, I have to pay 1,000 bob for the consultation, and then AAR will cover the rest of it, right? So I knew that if I went to another hospital, I would have to pay 1,000 bob that I would never see again, and then AAR would cover the balance, which is literally just telling me, oh, your finger is healing well, good job, right? It's good job staying out of water or whatever. So I didn't really feel like that was necessary because this other side was already free. So I was like, let me just take my chances sort of and go back to the same hospital, the same people, and have them just look it over and make sure everything is good, everything is okay. And that visit actually ended up costing me 480 shillings, which I have the invoice here for, because of course I billed AAR for that as well, because at the end of the day it's the exact same cost that they would have paid in their own coverage, at a hospital where I have coverage of AAR, and they paid it, and I wasn't out 1,000 bob, I wasn't out any cash in the long run from that accident that happened. So yeah, it was just a whole thing of realizing that sometimes the medical people are not on your team always. The guys who did my finger were amazing, the guys who actually worked on me were amazing, but then when I found out that I could get a claim form, the agent was like, I can email one to you, and I was like, no, since the hospital is close by, I can just walk over there instead of having to go and find somewhere to download it and print it and then photocopy it and whatever. I can just go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital reception and asked them, can I have a claim form? And she was like, oh, we don't provide those here, right? That's the secretary. So I was like, oh, weird, but okay, because every hospital is supposed to have them. So in my head, I didn't tell her that, right? Because it's not a right. I'm not an entitled asshole, right? So I told the guy, just like, yeah, email it to me. I guess I have to find like a photocopy place, like a cyber. Who has used a cyber recently in like this day and age, But yeah, so I did go to a cyber. I printed off multiple copies. That is why I have so many here, because I was like, for future reference, I'm not going to be stuck like without one, right? So I have one that is blank and clean and everything. So God forbid something else happens and I need to claim again, I can just photocopy this versus having to go printing again. I feel like photocopy is easier, because even in the hospital I could have just photocopied it versus having to print it. So I went there with my 5 copies and I was like, okay, how do I fill this? The doctor actually walked me through it, and there's a point where now I was going for my second follow-up visit, so I filled it in for the first visit, and then when I got to the secretary place, like paying cash so that I can get the receipt and get the printouts and whatever, she was like, oh, you should have just filled both the visits on the one form, right? But then I was like, because I was dating it, I didn't know if it would be seen as some sort of fraud. Like, why does the invoice show them a week apart, but then the claim form shows them together? Like, I didn't want any of those issues. So I was like, yeah, I wasn't really sure what to do. She was like, oh yeah, you can just put them all on one sheet. Do you need me to give you another one? And I'm like, you're the same person who told me you don't provide those. So I don't know what the attitude was on day 1, but day 2 she was more than happy to provide me with one. Apparently they had them there. So yeah, I was just like, no, I have my photocopies, because I made literally like 10 copies just to be on the safe side. So I was like, I have so many copies, I'll just pick one and like fill it in and whatever. So I just filled them in separately for the 2 visits. So one was 11,000 something, and then another one was 480. And I was like, you know what, this is why I have medical cover, so they can cover every single thing. And I submitted it. It was approved. It took about a month for them to process it and put it in my account. And one other thing that AR has as a definite benefit is MTIBA. So they have star something 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 hash, and you go into their portal and you can actually see like what your balances are for the different things. So like eye, dental, inpatient, outpatient, all of those balances are shown in that USSD thing. So how I actually knew that the money had been deposited in my account is I got a text from MTIBA saying that your outpatient has gone down from 150,000 to 138,000 or something like that, right? So yeah, then I went into my account and I found they've refunded me 11,000 shillings, yay! So yeah, that was essentially my entire process. And MTIBA itself, I'm not gonna give you like a tutorial on how to use it or anything like that, just because it can be a hot mess in and of itself. Because the day that I had the dental thing, which was after this finger thing, so my wisdom tooth, the filling that was there came out and it felt like a cave in my mouth, right? So I wanted to have it sorted out. So I went into their portal and I was like, there's a section for like find a dentist near me, right? And I went through it and I put in the different locations. So like I put in Athi River, because I was like, it's not too far, I can drive there. Kitengela, not too far, I can drive there. Syokimau, this area. I was trying to remember how not to tell you how to get to my house, right? So Syokimau area. I went even as far as freaking is it Embakasi? No, Imaradaima, Cabanas. Like I literally went step by step by step. And when you put in the area, they give you a list of approved providers, because I didn't want to go somewhere and then have to pay out of pocket and then have to pay and then have to wait a month for the refund, So I wanted to be 100% sure that these people were in coverage. So when I put in Athi River, it gives me a list of all the approved dental providers in Athi River. Now, the numbers on that list don't even work. So then I have to take the name, Google it, find the number there, and then call them. And then they tell me, oh no, we closed. Oh no, we don't accept MTIBA. Oh no, we don't accept insurance, but you can come, but we don't accept insurance. Or we do this, but we don't do this, but we do this. But like, it was just such a hot mess. Literally, I went all the way, like putting in different sections and calling all the numbers that are listed for that section until South B is when I finally found a dentist that could actually take me. And then he directed me to his dental practice that is in Embakasi. So it's like, it was crazy. It was a good process because that's how I found my dentist, who really, really helped me out. So I was very, very happy. Like, I'm really glad this whole process ended up with me finding him. But at the same time, that MTIBA situation was just such a hot mess. I feel like they need to update their records, because I would call a dental practice and they're like, oh no, we closed the Kitengela branch, but you can come to Lavington. And I'm like, there's a reason I chose the Kitengela one, because it's a 16-minute drive from me versus the Lavington one, which is traffic, right? And then I was like, if I'm going to have like the anesthesia injection, I don't know if I'll be loopy, I don't know if I'll be able to drive home. And it was just like a whole thing. And even my regular dentist is in Lavington, so if I'm going to go to, well, actually he sold his practice, he was in Lavington, but if I was going to go to Lavington, that is where I would have gone. It's not like somewhere random that I don't know. So it's just I don't know, it's hard for me to commend the MTBA platform, just because it has its good and it has its bad. I really like that you can actually actively see your balance. So when I eventually went to the dentist in Embakasi, I was able to pay with MTBA. So with the copay, I pay 800 shillings, because consultation is usually about 1,000 bob. And it's more expensive if you're paying with insurance. It's actually cheaper if you're paying cash. So consultation, I would have paid 500 cash, but because I wanted to go through insurance, I paid 800 bob for consultation, and insurance paid 200 bob. As we stand right now, I have completely depleted my dental allowance, basically, and that's not really great. You know, that's a very, very small dental allowance, which is why I keep kicking myself. Like, if I could go back in time, like, you know, those questions of what would you tell a younger you? This is what I tell a younger me: pay for that insurance. 30,000 for 80,000 shillings. Freaking amazing. But yeah, you live and you learn. And until I get into a workplace that can negotiate a deal like that again, I don't see it happening, which is very, very sad. So yeah. Okay, so I think I have given you every single bit of information that I can think of that is relevant to this topic. If there's something I've missed out, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if there's any questions you have that you might want answered, because I will leave, okay, I'll ask him if I can leave his number down below, and then I will put his number down below, so you can just reach out to my guy directly. But thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. This was quite a long video, so I hope you understand why it is I needed to like sit down and like actually have notes and like get all my ducks in a row before I could answer it. Like, it's not something you can just talk of like off the top of my head, you know? So yeah, I hope this video is helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Thumbs up if you did. Be sure to subscribe. Let me know what you think down below, and I will see you in my next video.